So the game design document is usually used for video games, but for the purposes of what we're talking about with Second Life, it's a good structure to use for creating games. In short, it is the written explanation of everything that the product will do, will need to do, will need to be made for, everything about it, right? So this is the document that I wrote up for my scripter. I wanted to show you guys this because I think it's important for you to try to flesh out your product as much as you possibly can when you go to give it to somebody to create. So you're going to see some weird terms in here that don't necessarily apply to what actually came out with Forever Tourist E3, but what you will see is some structure. So let's go how I broke it down. To start, I have assets needed, and by assets, that means these are the things that I am getting Tessa to build. So, and I gave her general ideas of what these things are and what needs to be made for it. And you can kind of see that I explained what it is, right? Like, this is going to be free. I only need the scripts made for this because I plan on using base prems with textures. And I actually link in this. I use Google Docs for this, and I actually use the bookmark function. So if she wanted to, she could come here and she could click this bookmark, and it would take her to a different part of the document that details specifically what this thing is later on. Let me go back up here to the top so you guys know what I'm talking about here. Assets is the first part. I went into detail for each individual asset. So like we talked about that Explorer HUD. If I scroll down here, I made like details, right? So I have a screenshot of this is my original HUD design that I had planned for it. Oh man, I would like the other one, the one I'm doing now. But I gave her a screenshot, right, of like what the idea of what this thing was. And then the avatar is supposed to wear this HUD item only when actively playing the game or traveling. The Explorer HUDs used to access the in-world passport display, which is like the thing that holds your stamps if you guys are following the Forever Tourist game, and store information as they explore the Second Life grid. And so I'm not going to read this whole thing, but you can kind of see how I've detailed it, right? And then I've talked a little bit about like if you were to look at that image, what is the big cog? What is the little cog? What each thing is supposed to do when you click it and how they're supposed to work. And then, I talked about how like if you clicked one cog, it would open up a dialogue menu, which Tessa had to train me. I was calling them blue menus, and I thought she was going to kill me. So she was like, don't call them blue menus. She called them dialogue menus. But anyway, the dialogue menus. And so I talked about like the different things that I would need the dialogue menu to go to and stuff like that. So how the HUD was supposed to work, everything it was supposed to do, and how it would interact with different, devices. And I did that for every single piece. Every single piece of the pie here, right? Like every part of the product, I outlined that, and you can see some of them are very long. So yeah, I also put some other things in there that like, it would be cool if it could do this or if it couldn't do that and stuff. The other thing, that should be mentioned as far as like creating this. One of the things I really liked about working with Google Docs for this particular thing was A, Tessa had Gmail, so it was fabulous. And B, it allowed us to comment back and forth. So you can see that she like highlighted stuff, and she made notes for herself through here. Or sometimes she would be like, hey, what do you think about this? And so, you can see here, she's like, it could work as a dialogue menu, but it might be nice to have these as separate HUD buttons so you can store the URLs and the child prem rather than the script, which that's ultimately led to further thinking down the line, And so she said, hey, what do you think of this? And I was like, yeah, whatever you think is good. And so we can comment and talk back and forth to each other, and then you can come back and see what was the discussion on this. So that's the game design document. Basically, you write out every single little thing that you need, and it's good for your scripter, but it's good for you too, because now you can figure out every little graphic that needs to be made, all of the text that has to be written, like all of the other pieces to the pie that you've got to figure out in order for the product to be made. So, game design document, friends.